fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Well, today, joining me, we have a writer, and he's got a new book out. The book is called The Second Life of Jonathan Sendel, and the author, Jeffrey Ashkin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Jeffrey, let's talk about how you got into writing this book. Why write a book?
The genesis of this came from me actually being, I don't want to say obsessed, but I've been fascinated by human cloning ever since. I remember back in the day they talked about Dolly the sheep, where they cloned a sheep. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Is it going to be humans next? And technically, I think there's no technology. I mean, the technology is available now to do human cloning. Of course, the ethical reasons are many not to do it. It's something I explored actually when I was a teenager. I wrote a play about cloning called My Self. So I thought that was so clever on my part. But it was something that explored just basically how different your life would be if you had a different environment to be around. And I liked the exploration of it. This got performed at the Hippodrome Theater in Gainesville, Florida. I was very happy that it got out there and people respond to it very well. But I wanted to write something a little bigger than that. So I did write a screenplay that I felt was in keeping with that theme of cloning and the ethics of it and, the existential question of our nature versus nurture. But then I really was inspired actually by the Me Too movement and seeing how certain people were discovered to be not as upright as I thought they were. And they had some toxic things about them, and there were things that I was really disgusted to hear about. There were people in the Me Too movement that were revealed to be toxic people. And I wanted to explore the relationship between someone having a public persona and having this opinion of themselves as well that was not accurate. And, exploring how, we see ourselves a certain way and other people see us a different way. And there's some middle ground there. So in the story, you have a character who wakes up and finds out that he's been murdered, and now he's been cloned back to life to solve his own murder. And as he goes through this process, he discovers things about himself that he didn't, it's like, oh yeah, that's just something, that was pretty messed up thing I did. And you realize that there's some things about himself that he hasn't really come to atone for. So I feel like that whole idea was something that once again plays into the existential view of what cloning can do and where we're going as a society as a whole.
Yeah, I remember that. It seems like quite a while ago, but it was all the rage, the excitement, and everyone talked about it, and then it all just disappeared.
Yeah.
It just became a thing of nobody talked about it anymore, and it kind of went away. That's interesting. And now your character, Jonathan, who is Jonathan then? Like, how do you arrive at this character, and what kind of relationship do you have with this character? So when you're writing Jonathan, are you hearing his voice, or are you seeing him like a movie, or are you feeling him, or is it a separate entity, or maybe explain that?
For me, the Jonathan character was basically an amalgamation of a lot of different types of celebrities that I'd seen either in person or on TV, and there's like a slick persona, but like a very personal person who's got some personal shortcomings. And I've seen this a lot where there's people who have, like I said, a public persona and a private persona. And I would say that one of the things that I wanted to make sure he wasn't, I didn't want to make him an actor or someone in the film industry per se. I felt like that's been done. We've seen stories like that, and I am still pursuing screenwriting as well, so I didn't want to get too tangled up in, how the film industry works and, the process of getting a screenplay out there. So I thought making him an author would be a good kind of middle ground between someone who has some fame and then someone who also has some prestige and holds himself up on a very high pedestal. So I would say that in terms of his character, it would be and I have experience with this myself, just being around people who are also writers, someone who's full of himself and understandably so, and has pride about his work, but also someone who And this is something that I have to make sure that the novel itself is from the perspective of the clone. It's basically someone giving you the information of a former life that's not really his. The clone has this ability to remember things slowly through the course of the story. As he discovers the things that horrify him, he's starting to become more and more of his own person. And that's really the crux of cloning that I think is the most fascinating part for me, is if someone was cloned with all your memories, is that person really you? And I would say no. I would say that even though they may look like you and sound like you and have all your memories, I don't think that they would feel beholden to you, per se. Maybe they would. But in terms of writing it, I wanted to really address that kind of voice in a story. And I feel like I was inspired, I'd say, by like Frankenstein, for example, the great Mary Shelley novel, who wrote it when she was 18. I still marvel at that. She was a fantastic writer. And one of the things about that story is you get the doctor's point of view and you get the monster's point of view in the story, which is not really, it's so interesting that the way she writes the story has never quite, I feel like, been kind of translated to movie. And I don't know how it could be, but it's framed, there's three different narrators. There's the ship captain who discovers the novel, discovers Frankenstein, then Frankenstein's story himself, and then the monster's point of view. And I feel like the monster's point of view is the most interesting one for me. I liked having the monster's point of view in the story of Frankenstein. And technically, I mean, I'm not saying that the clone in the story is a monster, but the idea that he's becoming his own person. You know, he doesn't need to necessarily become Jonathan Sendel, because maybe he's not someone he should become. And that's basically what guided me through the story is, so what if you went through your life? What if you woke up one day and you found out you were a clone of somebody, and immediately you thought, okay, well, I'm going to go back to the life I had. And you're like, wait a minute, is this really the life I want to go back to? And that really was informed all my writing decisions in terms of where the character was going to go. Like, okay, he would discover this about his personal life, this is about his public life, this is about, and that would be all outlined. And of course, I would use that to work on the novel.
Did you have the idea of the story first, and then you created Jonathan, or did you have Jonathan as a character kind of already shaped and partially created, and then you put him into the story?
For me, I think it was more the concept first. I had always been fascinated by stories that have differing points of view, and points of view that are misleading, maybe an unreliable narrator. One of the books of recent years that I really liked was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. And I just thought it was such a great way of giving you I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it yet, or the movie, of course. She's great about putting you in the mindset of a character and then twisting it. And so basically I wanted to have like someone who, once again, had a certain point of view that was basically twisted. And then, of course, I came up with the character based on things that I'd seen, some people that I had, once again, on the Me Too movement, that some of the slicker people who I was like, oh, okay, so that person's not very good. And I used that to kind of inform how I would make the character. Because I just noticed that, you know, there are certain people that we respond to as an audience member and as someone we think we admire, but then you find out more about the person, you're like, oh, okay, so you're not who I thought you were. So the concept of finding out, you know, the concept of finding out someone's not who you think they are, and the concept of having a clone be that person who was actually the former person, I basically just put those two together, and that kind of was the spark that kept me going through the story.
Right. I can't help but think that that's probably the subtext as well. It's kind of the meaning or something you want the reader to take away from it, something to do with that.
Yeah, exactly. I really do. I really want people to explore, you know, basically, you know, how deep you can be, like how deep the well of your own psyche is. I had a dream once where I was playing football. I knew I was dreaming because I was playing football. I saw that the other team was made up of people, me actually. I saw the captain of that team was another version of myself. And I'm like, oh wow, I'm dreaming and I'm playing as myself. I bet my other self is going to do this play or something. And I was wrong. Like I completely did not know the other side. And I'm like, wait a minute, but this is my dream. I'm supposed to know everything. My own psyche tricked me. And I thought to myself, I'm not saying this is like for everybody, of course, but I think that there are things about our own past and our own future and our own, every little thing that we do impacts us and our nature more so than we think. And I think that is something that, once again, I wanted to explore with this. I feel like that's something that is very interesting to me, and I love hearing about people's journeys and how they got to where they are, and their their own writing journey or their own acting journey or any type of journey they want to take. However they became how they are. It's just interesting to see the connection. You can see it with directors and even people who are not, of course, in the arts. Of course, if anyone who's in any sort of industry, there are certain factors that lead you there, and if one of those factors wasn't there, you may not have taken that leap or that made that decision.
When you go through something like this, and you this is a pretty deep subject, and it sounds like it means a lot to you as well as just entertainment. It's a story that means something. How do you think the process of writing this book has changed you or affected you in any way?
Well, I would definitely say that it was a lot of fun adding to the story. The screenplay was about, I'd say, 100 pages, I think. And when I decided to make it into a novel, the process of adding to it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed, describing rooms and describing characters in depth and going into backstories, but also trying to keep the story moving and making sure that it was a fun read as well. I would say that it's changed me in the sense that I realized that I could do novels as well. I really just wanted to focus on screenplays. But the process of writing a novel was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed rewriting it. I enjoyed editing it. I enjoyed working with the publisher on picking out a cover for it and just talking about the where we can go with it and the marketing of it. I thought it was great to know that the novel exists. It's out there. You can read it. It has everything you need to know. You don't need to have anything else beside the novel. So that's something that I felt like was really fulfilling, and I think that it's given me the confidence to continue doing another one. There's been some discussion about another book possibly in the series, and I'm excited about where it can go, and I think that I definitely would like to do another one. So that's led me to continue to write in novel form, in addition to, of course, writing screenplays as well.
Right. And coming from screenplays into a story, what do you think the biggest challenge was for you, the biggest struggle?
I would say it's the structure and the pacing. For screenplays, there's a very specific timing that you have to have with a screenplay. And when I say that, I mean like you want to make sure that there's something that happens, on page 15 and an act break on page 30. And not to get too in detail with it, but most stories, most movies that we see fall into this category where there's the opening night. I went to film school for this, and we learned about how there's an opening act, and then there's a second act, and a third act, and that's true for pretty much all stories. But with scripts, it has to be very specific, or you're going to notice your reader and your audience getting restless. Like, okay, something has to happen here. Where's the next act break? People aren't going to say that, but they're going to feel that. It doesn't feel like the story's progressing if you don't have those particular things. The moment where the main character makes the decision, there's no turning back, With a novel, I feel like you have more leeway. You can have a lot more fun with the first act. You don't have to have the act breaks being very specific. There's no 2-hour limit to writing a novel, or reading the novel in a 2-hour span. Obviously there are movies that are longer than 2 hours, of course, and they are structured in a way that obviously makes up for that extra time. But with a novel, since you have basically infinite time, you have, as long as the reader pays attention, as long as you're interested in the novel, I think that you can write something that can take, much longer to read and get really in depth with the characters and go off on journeys that have multiple acts to it. And I think that the audience is willing to go along with it as long as it's fun and exciting and keeps their interest. So that's the cool thing about novels that I like a lot. But obviously I still like movies. I like writing scripts for movies as well because I feel like there's more of a technical challenge to it, and I like challenging myself to making it fit within those parameters.
Right. So what do you think this came from for you, like this creative side and the writing and the screenplays and all that stuff? Is it something that you've always felt since you can remember, or is this something that came along?
It's funny you say that because a little bit about me, I grew up in South Florida, a town called Boca Raton. By way of New York, I have to bring that up because all my family's from New York, and like many people, we moved from New York to Florida. That happens a lot. Anyway, so I grew up in Boca Raton, and going out to the movie theater was something that, I don't know, it just was a special time. My parents and my brother and I would go to the movies, and we usually had to watch something that I think we all agreed upon, because, I don't know, it just seemed like that kind of worked out that way. I usually didn't go to the movies by myself until I was a little older in my teenage years, but when I was younger, we went to movies that we all could enjoy. So maybe it was a big superhero movie, maybe it was a comedy, but it was something that I felt like we all wanted to see. To me, I think from a writing point of view, I started to subconsciously incorporate, okay, well, if someone my age was gonna watch this, they'd like this, but someone's older was watching this, they want to see that. And just kind of, I guess, subconsciously, not to use an industry term, I started to think about the 4-quadrant structure of a movie. You want to get the older generation, the younger generation, just something for everybody. And I can see that with a lot of the big movies where they do have that idea where they have something for everybody. As I got older, I couldn't go into film school as a teenager. That wasn't an option for me. So I got into drama and I started writing plays, and I found myself really liking that. But I did want to kind of segue into movies, so that's why I got into film school. And then film school became my life, and ended up moving out to Los Angeles after I graduated college, and that's where I've been ever since. So I think it's been the love of the cinema for me, and it's also been the journey to make films, and then of course knowing that you have a story that you really want to tell and finding the right medium for it. I mean, if this story ends up being a movie, that'd be great. But I'm very happy with how it turned out as a novel, and I think that it's a bunch of different things for me. Cinema, of course, being one, and also just telling a story that you really want to tell and making it the best it can be, and trying to connect with people as much as possible.
And your character there, Jonathan there. So who did you really name him after? Who is he really? Let's get some names here and
get some names. Geez.
Phone number, and let's get them on the line, and you can talk about how bad they are.
I would love to. I guess the name Jonathan, honestly, is just the name I just like a lot. I liked it a lot. I have 2 kids, and I didn't name them, either of them Jonathan, thankfully. But I like the character name, and in fact, I don't know. It's just something that sounds very like, I don't know, just all American, but also just general in a sense. Like, and instead of John Smith, it's Jonathan. You know what I mean? Just that kind of. And Sendel was, I don't know where Sendel came from. That I think was just, I think I wanted something along the lines of a sentinel. You know what I mean? And then it just kind of came from me just wanting something that was an original name. No one has this name. And it was something that I thought would just really fit with him. And I gave him a whole backstory that I thought was good. So I can tell you there are some actors that I would say maybe have influenced him and his look, but I can't really say that. I can't pinpoint it on one particular person. But there are, if you look up on the Me Too list, without giving it away, there are authors on the Me Too list that I will not say, but you can kind of you can use that as your guide if you want to take a look.
Yeah. Well, just, because you mentioned that a lot, and the, let's say, disappointment you felt in some of these celebrity type people that, and just maybe their behaviors or their opinions or what they say and do during tough times and stuff. All of this stuff that goes on around in the world. So do you think this really has a big impact on how you write your material?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's a very cathartic process for me. I love to write about things that I know about and kind of attach it to what's going on in the world and have my characters talk about it, so I don't have to. I basically like it's a release. You have points of view in your story, and your characters can say it, and I wanted to explore it in a place where I felt like I could have a lot of freedom to explore it. And of course, science fiction is great because the world that's in the story is not a real place. It's not a real cloning facility that you can get cloned back to life if you get murdered. So that element gave me the freedom to kind of just talk about, these issues in a way that I felt was, I don't know, like I said, cathartic. And I think that, I want people to keep having these conversations. I want to keep talking about there is this, not to go off on a rant here, but there is this feeling of celebrity worship we have in this country. And I'm sure that's everywhere, of course. But it's like, why are you worshiping someone who got breaks and they're normal people. Yes, they are, talented people, but we shouldn't have so much emphasis on success in this country. We should have more emphasis on merit, and of course, I say that, and of course, it sounds boring to me. Like, for example, who won the Nobel Prize last year? I don't know. And I'm not assuming you know, but we don't, because it's not really something that we care about too much. Not collectively in the zeitgeist, we're not talking about, people who are doing something amazing. We're talking about people who are young, beautiful, and rich. Those are really the three things that I think that we were not obsessed with, but that's something that we are drawn to in this country. And I can understand that to a point, but I do feel like there's something to be said for, being drawn to people who have done things that have progressed this as a society. But I guess even when I say that, I'm ready to fall asleep after I say that,
Yeah, well, I understand what you're saying, but I agree there should be more room. We shouldn't be focusing on Kim Kardashian, let's say, when there's other things that are more important, or people that are doing things that, let's say, help us as humans and stuff, right? There's not a balance.
Yeah, right now, I would say that, with the influx of social media, it's sometimes difficult to, find out because back in the day, social media has taken over our news sources, I feel like. For a whole generation, I feel is going to be using social media to get their news and the world around them. Back in the day, you have the news, and the news would tell you certain things, and you all had to be on the same page. Everyone knew what was going on, but now you have so many people who give news who are not vetted and not reps. So there are people who are getting news from people who are biased and not maybe giving out things that aren't correct. And unfortunately, we're ending up with people living in different realities than other people. And I think that's been kind of difficult to kind of discern for people who are maybe younger. I don't know if everyone's making sure the fact check. Like, okay, I read something. Is this accurate? Let me read other things to double check. You're already moving on to something else. The point has been made, and now you have to go on to something else. So it's a dangerous time, I feel like, to get the facts straight. And I feel like that's something that I'd like to explore in other stories maybe later.
So listen, how do you like people to contact you, like readers, fans, people that want to find you and stuff like that? Do you have like a website, a lemonade stand? Do you have social media? Like where do they find Jeffrey?
Well, if they want a great glass of lemonade, they can come to. No, I'm kidding. No, they would just go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Jeffrey Ashkin. They can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Jeffrey Ashkin. I'm also on Instagram @Jeffrey Ashkin. I'm on Blue Sky now, Jeffrey Ashkin. So those would be the places to find me.
So, okay, no, we're going to put your book up.
Yeah.
And your contact information and everything, so people can find it easily. And it's been a pleasure, and I wish you success on it and stuff. Are you following the reviews? Do you care about how people review you or what they say or do? And are you kind of watching it, or do you stay away from it?
I read every review. No, I do actually. That's actually true. I wasn't joking. No, I do. I want to say. I just want to say it's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes and Noble. It is available in person in Barnes & Noble in Burbank and at Sonny's Bookshop in Encino if you're in the Los Angeles area. I want to say, I'll hopefully soon be doing an audiobook, so I'll put some news about that. But I do care about the reviews. Going back to what you're saying, though, about the reviews, though, I do like reading the reviews. I've noticed, and I'm very humbled to say that I've noticed reviews by people I do not know to give me very good reviews. I've read them and I'm like, wow, who is this person? They got my book and they praised it. And I was very happy to see that and read that. Some of the reviews I'd say were not as positive, but they were still positive. So I haven't really, had a review that's like, no, this book sucks.
Well, we'll see if we can get that.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm thinking to myself, maybe someone's going to read what? I listened to that podcast with Jeffrey.
Yeah, no, you can't worry about it too much. And in a way, this is the first book and stuff, and you're doing all that, and you'll watch everything. But after years and several books, you'll start to kind of go look at the big picture.
I mean, like I said, I've been very I'm glad it exists and it's out there in the world. That to me is very heartwarming. I really like knowing that I have this book out there. I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy with it, and I hope people read it, and I hope to share that journey with them.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Did you have a lot of science fiction influence? Do you watch a lot of sci-fi shows and stuff like that? You can old classic ones or more of the modern?
Well, I'd say more of the modern would be Black Mirror. That would be, have you watched that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's been a big influence on me in terms of just getting into science fiction and the possibilities of now. But also I would say that Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone series that ran from 1959 to 1964, was a huge influence on me, especially growing up. My parents were big fans of the show, and I'd watch it when I was a kid, and I'd try to guess the twist at the end. And I was pretty good. Some episodes I did guess the twist. But what I loved about it was just the conciseness of the show, just how they could write something, and you get, okay, so this is the world, and then at the end there's this, and then it was just fun. It was fun. And the thing about the science fiction of that was that it wasn't about the science per se, it was about the human nature. And that's what I think that drew me in the most, is I loved the twist about, you could have people who are trying to go into a shelter, and then they were all friends, but now they're turning on each other because now they go to a bomb shelter. And then, the people on Maple Street are friends, but then there's this lights are going on and off in different houses, so they're all turning against each other. And I liked more the human nature element of those episodes, because I really felt like you could use science fiction to explore those themes without having to, talk about a certain real life event or anything going on. You could just make it very, not generalized, but you can make it unique and specific, and it's science fiction, so you don't have to worry about people feeling like, oh, this is based on me. It's like, no, it's based on these aliens.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Alfred Hitchcock and Twilight Zone, all that stuff. That era was Outer Limits. They had some great. And
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Philip K. Dick as well. Philip K. Dick, who, of course, wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which became Blade Runner, and We Can Remember For Your Wholesale, which became Total Recall, and, of course, Minority Report. Those movies I loved, and also the stories I thought were just brilliantly executed. So I have to mention him as well, because that's definitely an influence on my writing as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I appreciate you being here. Now, the book, The Second Life of Jonathan Sendel, and it's Jeffrey Ashkin. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.